Hello and welcome to Streamline Invoice Processing in Sage 300. Amanda here from MicroChannel Marketing, and today I have Jamie Steer with me from Auckland in New Zealand. So Jamie is the Principal and Business Development Manager for Pacifictech all around the world, and he'll be running us through how to gain more visibility and boost productivity in your finance team and all that good stuff. So over to you, Jamie.
Okay, very good. Thanks for that introduction there, Amanda, and yeah, hi to everyone. So just a little bit of background about our company. So Pacifictech has been providing solutions for Sage 300 for over 20 years. And so we've got over 2,600 Sage 300 customers that use our solutions around the world. We develop our solutions using the Sage 300 Software Development Kit, or SDK, and so that means our solutions are sitting inside Sage 300 and they look and feel like Sage 300, and they have all of the features you're used to, like importing and exporting and being covered in database dumps. So we've had a procure-to-pay suite for a number of years now, and the AP automation is part of that procure-to-pay, and so we'll be focusing on the AP automation today. And so as well as the modules in the Sage desktop, we also have web-based solutions and mobile capabilities, and they're a really important part of our AP automation solution. We've got data centers in 4 locations around the world, but the next point here is just, yeah, we've sell into over 100 countries, and we've won a number of awards over the years. We won one last year, which we were very proud of, so the top ISV partner for Sage Australia Pacific. So there's 40 ISVs who are in the running for that award. Okay, so just this next slide is showing the different suites that our solutions fall into. And so really the first suite is the workflow suite. So this is where the solutions, you can set up the workflows to, for transactions or master files to be approved by the appropriate people within the organization. And so that is all handled electronically, so people can get the approvals done more quickly and on a paperless basis. The next suite is the control suite, and so this, a number of our solutions are just adding in more controls to Sage 300. So one key one is the audit logger module. So that's, keeps, you say which areas of Sage 300 you want to have an audit logger running on, and then it will just capture all of that information in those areas. And we've got other control solutions as well. And then the third suite is our mobility suite, and this is very important for a workflow system, for managers to be able to do approvals from a web browser or from a smartphone. And so that's an area we've been putting a lot of focus into for the last sort of 2 or 3 years. So now this diagram is looking at the workflow solutions, and you can see there is, first of all, we've got our purchasing workflow, which is the whole procurement side of things. So the users do requisitions, go through an approval process and creates a purchase order. So that's, for a lot of companies, that's a very important part of their solution. But for today, what we're looking at is the next one here, which is the supplier invoice workflow, which is the AP automation. And so with this supplier invoices, so you put in the transactional data into the system. So the whole idea, as soon as the invoice arrives, then you have that captured within Payables workflow, and with the workflow documents module, that's where you save the invoice image. And so that can be a PDF, or it can be other file types. It can be a bitmap or a JPEG. So it's really lots of different file types are supported. So this is what we'll focus on today, is the supplier invoice workflow and the AP automation. But just, I guess, another module that's quite important as well is workflow notifications. So this is a very broad module. So it provides workflows on 24 entities within Sage 300. And so when we say in or 24 entities, the customer master file is one entity, the vendor master file is another entity, general ledger account codes is another entity, and IC items. So a lot of those main master files, you can have a workflow on them. And then on the transactions, you can also have workflows on your key transactions. So the main examples is AP payments, general ledger journal entries, AR credit notes, IC adjustments. So sort of all of those, the areas that are you hear about people committing frauds within an ERP system. That's where we put in the WN module to sort of try and get a workflow in those areas. All right, and then up above there is PW Web. So this is the web connected service. So this is where managers can do their approvals through the web interface. Okay, so now this next infographic is looking at just AP automation specifically, and this contains a lot of information, but I think a lot of it will be of interest to you. So in the green hexagon here on the left-hand side is the Sage modules, Sage 300 modules, accounts payable and purchase orders. So in the dark blue hexagon, these are our workflow modules that sit inside the Sage 300 desktop. And so that's the payables workflow for the whole invoice approval side of things. So over here on the left-hand side are the connected services. And so this is software that we've got running on, so we've got servers in Melbourne, in one of the high-end data centers in Melbourne. And so, but this software here is connecting to the Sage 300 system using web services. And so with the connected services, what we're doing is really providing very sort of state-of-the-art functionality to Sage 300 customers. So the first one that we'll talk about is the DPS. So that's document processing service. So that's the automated data capture of your invoices from your suppliers. So I think most of you, like a lot of the customers that we have in Australia, are already, getting a lot of your invoices coming in by email. A lot of companies say 80 up to 95% come in by email, and that's exactly what our solution is designed with, that as sort of the core process. So your suppliers email their invoices to you, to your mailbox. So what you then need to do is have rules to forward those invoices to a mailbox that we provide. And on that mailbox, the DPS system will look at the invoices that are attached and extract the information out of those invoices, and then create the transaction inside payables workflow ready for your AP people to work with it. And so you can see here, so this process happens very quickly. There's quite a number of processes that happen, and they can take about 1 to 2 minutes each. So normally the invoices will get through within 4 to 5 minutes. So from when your supplier emails it to your mailbox, within 4 to 5 minutes, that transaction will be sitting inside payables workflow. And so then you can see down here is what is the roles that the AP people do. So first of all, they should review what's come in. And so now, obviously, instead of doing the data entry, they are now reviewing what the system has captured. They can still edit it though, so then the AP people are not limited in any way. They can make whatever changes they want, and then they submit it into the approval process. So then for the approvals, you can do the approvals within the desktop, but what a lot of our clients are wanting or saying is, the managers approving the invoices are not logged into Sage 300 for any other reason, so they don't want them to go into Sage 300. And that's where our web approvals and our smartphone app come into play. So the web approvals, we've had that available for around about 10 years, so that's a very mature product. In terms of the smartphone app, that's been available for around about 2 years, so it's quite new. But we're getting some very positive feedback from that. We had one client in Canberra implemented that about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the feedback from the CFO was something like along the lines of she's never seen invoices get approved so fast. So that was good to hear. All right, so as the invoices are going through the approval process, they can have multiple approvals if you want them to, or they can just have a single approval. And once they're fully approved, then Payables Workflow pushes them over into the appropriate Sage module. So that can be the AP module, or if you also use the purchase order module, it can push them into the PO module. You don't have to have the PO module, so we've got lots of clients that run AP without PO, and it works fine. Another key point is the three-way matching, so that's part of our solution. So if you have the purchase order module, so you're having purchase orders created and then those are receipted, then when the invoice arrives, it will look for an open receipt, and if it finds it, it will do the three-way matching. We'll come to this obviously when we're looking at the software, but if it doesn't find the receipt, then the user then needs to find the receipt, and then it still does the matching once the user finds the receipt. And then the next part of the process, so what we've talked about up to now is the AP or the supplier invoices. Then once that's in the system, then the next step is to pay those invoices, and we've also got a workflow on the AP payments as well. All right, now just one point up in the top left corner is e-invoicing. So I'm not sure whether you people have come across that term, but Australia is pushing on this area quite hard. So I won't spend too much time on it, but it's the Australian government and the New Zealand government has chosen a format called PEPOL, which has come from Europe. So it's used right throughout Europe. Then Singapore picked it up 3 years ago, and then Australia and New Zealand picked it up 2 years ago. So it's sort of it's a standard format for invoices to be sent, not in a PDF, but in a JSON data file. So we've got support for e-invoicing. So if any of you are wanting to be able to receive e-invoices, our solution does that already. And we've got some government departments in Australia that are just ready to go live on that in the next few weeks. Right, and I guess another element, we'll come to the whole credit card and expense processing as well, but the solution provides a pretty elegant solution for that area as well. Okay, and so just to really cover off, what are the real benefits that companies are finding from putting in our AP automation? A real key bit of feedback we get at the AP staff feel much more in control. We've had some customers, one in New Zealand, where they were saying that 50% of their AP workload was removed by going to paperless. So that was a very good success story. So that's the AP staff. Then the cost center managers get benefits as well. So they, being able to do approvals electronically makes it more flexible for when they do their approvals. The finance team, there's quite a number of areas that they get savings. They can just drill down from the GL. They can drill back and look at the PDF, and they can look at who approved it just within a few clicks. We've got a macro that does the automated month-end accruals. So some companies are saying that's saving them 4 to 6 hours every month. And a few other ones, controls are enforced by the Sage 300 system. So then that's the three-way matching and, making sure the appropriate people sign off on invoices. The system is making sure that that's happening. It's not able to be bypassed. and also just the whole transparency. So, you know, you've got all this information available within Sage 300. So anyone who, you know, can look at it and see who did the approvals and the comments they made, and look at the PDFs. All right, so that's all we're planning on doing in terms of the actual PowerPoint. So now we'll have a look at the software itself. So here's our Sage 300 desktop. So you can see the payables workflow module sitting here, and yeah, it looks and feels like any other Sage module. You can see the setup in here. We won't sort of probably have time to go through this today, but you can see just a few key things, the authority levels. So this is where you put in your delegated authorities, so how much people can approve up to. Then the users, you need to set up all the users in here. So even though they might just use the web or the smartphone as their only entry points or access points, they still need to be configured as users in here. But that doesn't use up a LAN pack. You can have 1,000 users in here, but it's the Sage process or Sage LAN packs just look at the concurrent users. So yeah, so setting up 1,000 users in here doesn't cost you a cent from a LAN pack perspective. And the next area is the workflows. So if we just open that very quickly. And just to look at it, so you can see here the workflow, so it goes step 10, 20, 30, 50, 100. And this is all, you know, what you would work on with the MicroChannel team. You know, they've got a lot of experience with our modules, so they can help you set this up. But here you can see it goes to the cost center manager for the first approval. Once, if that person approves it, it goes to step 20, so it checks a dollar value. Then if it's over $500, it goes to the controller for a second approval. Some companies have a final review by a finance person just to check sort of GL coding and things like that. So, and then it pushes over to AP. And then for a PO invoice, then you can get in your whole three-way matching and your variance checking. We probably won't have time to sort of go through this in detail, but the system can check the variance on each line to the PO and the receipt, you know, based on the rules that you set up. Okay, so what we'll do though, so that's just a quick discussion of some of the setup. So what we could do is the users can come and enter their transactions into payables workflow. They so manually key them in and attach the invoice image. But what we're finding a lot of companies in Australia and New Zealand and Canada are wanting to put in these days is the automated data capture, which is the DPS system that I referred to before. So this screen here is the DPS console. So this is the landing page where the invoices come into Sage once they've had the data extracted automatically. So this is really the list of invoices that AP need to work with. So what we'll do, if we just take a note of the last one here, which is it's modern 210420, because what I'll do is send in an invoice into the system so you can see it coming through. So I've got an invoice set up here. So if I just open that up. So here's the invoice. So it's got, so it's modern, and then today's date 210513, and then -002, and then the date, the GST number. In Australia, that would be the ABN number, obviously. And down here is one notebook computer, 2 keyboards, and 2 mice. So this invoice here, this is not relating to a purchase order. This is just a direct AP invoice, but this will show you how the process works. So I'll send this into the DPS system, and within 4 to 5 minutes, we should see that arrive down at the bottom of this list. So while we're waiting for that to come in, let's just have a look at some of these other ones that are sitting here. Oh, so if I just go back, so this is just a list, so it shows you one line for each invoice, so you can see the invoice number, the vendor number, the other fields, the dollar value, how many attachments. So if we double click to open one of these up, Then what you can see is the invoice image on the right-hand side and the data that has been extracted on the left-hand side. And so if we just go through that, actually there's a few things, a few key points. So really if the system is working with a machine-generated PDF, so in other words, if your supplier is emailing their invoices to you directly out of their system, that's what we call a machine-generated PDF. And for those types of PDFs, the success rate that we get is 95% or higher. So very high success rate. What the system does, it'll try to extract the data in that way. But if it's not a machine-generated PDF, then it falls back to the sort of older, more traditional OCR technology, which is where it's reading a scan. And so in that case, I guess it depends on the quality of the scan. Some of them as you would all know, you can have high quality or low quality and that sort of thing. But the success rate does drop down in that case. So what we find normally is sort of 80 to 85% success rate. Right, so that's the systems. Yeah, so what we're finding in Australia and New Zealand, a lot of invoices are coming in machine-generated PDFs, so that's good. Now, the next thing is you need to train the system on 5 invoices for each vendor. So, but when you train, let's say if this was the first invoice that you were going to train for this vendor, the system has actually got some quite good sort of intelligence in it. So with the old systems up until sort of 4 or 5 years ago, they didn't really have any intelligence, so you had to sort of tell them where to look to find a field. Whereas with the technology we're using, it can see a text string of invoice number and date, and it actually will guess that is the invoice number because it's on the right-hand side of that. So to train it, it's actually quite a straightforward process. The AP staff can do it quite easily. You don't need, anyone who's a technical expert to do the training. Right, so that's the training. So now if we just come back, so here we've got the document number, so I got that out of the PDF. For the vendor number, the way it works is off the GST number or the ABN number. So we can see here it's 987654222. So if we go over and look at our vendor master file, I happen to know it's 2800. But what the system has done is it's read the GST number or the ABN number and come and search the vendor master file and found that that's the vendor code. So that's how it works out the vendor code. The workflow and the cost center, they can be defaulted in different ways. You can have a default for each vendor. You can have a default at a vendor level, but if you don't have a default at the vendor level, then it can revert to a company-wide default. Then the document value, it's extracted that out of the PDF, and the date is out of the PDF as well. And we've also got it picking up the bank account number. So some companies are, quite keen on having that as a second match. So match on the GST number or the ABN number and on the bank account number. And then now down here are the lines as well. So it's picked up the line information from this invoice. So I'll just close that one and come back here, and if I hit the refresh button, yes, we can see this other one's come in, so let's work with this one. So again, we double click, open it up. It's got it 100% correct. So we now click process, which takes us through to the second screen, which is the payables workflow AP invoice entry screen. And here is where the GL codes are sitting. So AP can make more changes here if they want to. So let's change the GL code to 650-200. And also the system has attached the PDF automatically. So that's sitting there. So that's something else AP don't need to do. All right, so now we're happy with that invoice, so we now click submit, and this is now pushing it into the approval process. And AP can always come and look at this tab here, workflow events. They can see who it's been routed to. So if you remember from the workflow, it said, let's push it to the cost center manager for their first approval. So the cost center was marketing, and the manager of the marketing cost center is the div manager. So it's routed it to that person. So now there's the whole topic of emailing, and we've got different ways that we can send emails to let the managers know that they've got an invoice to be approved, or one or more invoices. So you can either send them out, or what most companies do is they'll have an automated process that runs once per day that sends one email to every manager who's got one or more invoices to let them know. And that actually, if I just close that, that email can also have a hyperlink. So let's now go and look at the web approval. So the division manager would have got an email, and that email will have this hyperlink in it. And if you go with this system, then one of the first things that most clients do is have their own logo and banner put on the top. So that's something that we encourage. You don't have to do that, but yeah, it just makes it look, you have your own look and feel. So now, we've got the username, we put in the passwords, that's the Sage password. We can see all the companies from the drop down that we have this set up for, and then we click on login. And so what this is now doing is connecting from here through to the Sage system and checking whether that password is correct. So if it's correct within Sage, then the next thing it's doing is reading the security resources that you've given to that user. So these menus that are here, what is shown on these menus is all driven by the security within Sage 300. So because we're doing an approval of an invoice, so I've got this set up as my landing page to approve invoices. The users can nominate whichever page they want as their landing page when they log in. Now, so here's the invoice, my one invoice to approve, so we can see the header information. If we want, we can, if you give people the access, they can open up the invoice in what we call edit mode. Actually, if I just go back, so the user can open up the invoice in inquiry mode. So that would be just clicking on this icon here. So that's where they can just view the invoice. So they can see the lines and the GL codes and the dollars, and they can look at the attachments. So that's one way of looking at the invoice. But then if you give them the access, they can also view it in edit mode. And I probably shouldn't spend too long on this, but if you want them to change the GL code, they can do that. They can come in here and click edit, and they can pick up another GL code. And this is controlled also as to what GL codes they have access to. So that's a very important part of the system as well. And then another part which is important to mention is what we call quick review. So this is something we got a lot of feedback, people saying there's just too many clicks. So they asked us to cut down the number of clicks. So we introduced quick review. So what this now does is opens up the PDF on the right and the data on the left, so the manager can see it all in one screen. I mean, I guess when we see it now, you sort of think it's obvious, like why didn't we do that originally? But I guess that's like all software, isn't it? But I guess one of the key points is, we got feedback from 5 or 6 customers saying it was taking too many clicks. So within a month or two, we addressed that issue, and now people are very happy with how efficient it is. So now, if I wanted to approve it, I would just change this to approve, or I could change it to decline. And we've got a 60-character comment field here. So this is field, if you're declining an invoice, it's really important because this gets emailed back to AP, so they know what to do as the next step. But even if you're approving or declining, you can put in this comment, and it's also kept in the database. So it's quite useful from a audit trail perspective. Right, so I won't approve that one though. I'll just log out, because what I want to show you is the smartphone app. And this is what we call Pacifictech Go. And so we log in with the same credentials. And so I'm showing this to you in a browser, but this is a native app. So you can download it from the Google Store and the Apple Store. And it looks exactly like this. So we've got 2 requisitions, and we've got 1 AP invoice. So we can click on the arrow to look at the invoice, and here we can see who it's from. We can see there's 1 attachment, and it's $1,785. So we can now look at the details. So we can see it's the notebook computer, then the keyboard and the mouse. And here we can look at the invoice attachment as well. And so this is opening in the browser, but if you're running this as a native app, then that would just download it just like any other app does on your phone. Right, and so now you can also attach extra documents here, and this has proved to be quite a valuable part of our whole credit card and expense processing solution. The ability to upload files from the phone, so in terms of photos and things like that, can be uploaded to an existing transaction. So if I'm happy with this, I need to hurry up so that I can push this through. So I'll go on the green tick and I'll say something like this is fine and click submit. So now it's going green, so that's what it's doing there, is sending a message back to Sage, to Payables Workflow, saying this person's approved this invoice, move it along to the next step in the process. And now that invoice now disappears from this person's menu. So now we'll go back to Sage 300. Now, let's say the vendor rings up at this point. So, what we've got here, if I just slow down a bit, under Payables Workflow Statistics and Inquiries, we've got a few inquiry screens, but one really important one is vendor activity. And because this is, when I say important, this is very useful for the AP stuff. So we've taken the vendor activity from the AP module and we've added this tab here. And so this lets AP or anyone look at all of the invoices for this. Whoops, I double clicked on that by mistake. So if we go to the bottom, we can see our one down here. So AP can look at all the invoices, sort of the ones going through the workflow and the ones that have, gone through the workflow, the completed ones. So here, if the vendor rings up and sees what's happening with this invoice 210513-02, AP can just see straight away that it's sitting with the controller, so they can sort of chase them up and take some action. So that's just that activity screen. So we know it's with the controller. I'm actually logged in as the controller, so I'll come into the approval console. So I'll do my approval within the desktop. So there is our one here. So again, we can double click, or actually what I should do is open up quick review. So we've got quick review in the desktop as well as in the web. So there it's showing all the information, the PDF on the right-hand side and the key transactional data on the left-hand side. So we just go approve and then scroll to the next one. Then we can go approve or decline, scroll to the next one. So it's only 2 clicks per invoice. All right, and then we click post. So this invoice needed 2 approvals, and after that was the second approval. So now it's pushed it over into AP automatically. So there it is sitting there. So it's in a batch called PA. PA being the 2-character identifier for Payables Workflow. So I'll post that batch. That's now pushed it through to the GL. So the next part in the process is, if you're looking at the GL, and And if let's say if we're looking at this account here, office supplies, $152,000. So you're wondering what makes that up. So you look at the transactions, and if you see this invoice here, if you're not sure what that's all about, you can double click, and that opens up the GL journal, and then you can drill to the AP invoice. So all of you would have that functionality with your system today, but with Payables Workflow, you get an extra drill here. So this takes us to the Payables Workflow AP invoice entry screen. We can come and look at the invoice image, and then we can look at who approved it. So we can see the division manager approved it there, and then the controller approved it, and that was the comments they put in. So yeah, from the GL, when you're looking at your GL transactions, you can just drill back, look at the PDF and look at who approved them. And likewise from AP, you can do that same drilling. Right, so for finance people, that can save them quite a number of hours each month, and just having access to invoice images. So now that's okay. So let's just look at a few other things. We've got our overdue emailer. So this is a very important part of the system. So when I say days overdue, this is from overdue from an approval point of view. So that when you set the system up, you say how many days the people have got to do their approvals, and the system tracks when they should do their approvals by. So here, so this is quite useful as a inquiry tool, because you can just see straight away who's which managers have been very slow on doing their approvals, but it also lets the AP people send out emails to chase up these overdue ones. Right, so that's the overdue emailer. Then another part of it is the general ledger accrual journal entry. So let's say if you're closing off the April accounts, and you know there's still some invoices going through the approval process, you can come in here, and what this is doing is reading through all of the invoices that are still going through the approval process and doing a reversing GL journal to accrue those. So it's batch 575. So if we go and look here, and this is an open batch so that you can make changes to it if you want to. So you can see here it's auto reversing, and if we look at the bottom, it's got it's got all that. You can run it in detail mode or summary mode. And if you want to make changes to it, you can do them. All right, so some companies have said that saves them sort of 4 to 6 hours each month just on that accrual process. Right, now another part of the system is substitutions and reallocations. So with any workflow system, if managers are away, you need a way of the system keeping on working while they're away. So that's what we've got. First of all, substitutions. So if someone's going away for a week holiday, they would set up a substitution for that period and who they should get routed to. So that's a substitution. And the other side of the process is reallocations. That's if someone is on unplanned leave, so say for example sick leave, so an invoice is already sitting with the person. This person doesn't have any, but here the controller, so they've got about 6 or 7 invoices sitting with them, and if the controller was on sick leave and one of these invoices was really urgent to put through, then they could be reallocated to another manager to push it through quickly. All right, so that's all pretty well, works well in practice. Now let's just look at the AP payment side really quickly as well. So by moving to a paperless paperless invoice side of things, that has a flow-on impact to your payment approvals, because now you won't have any hard copies. So we've sort of tried to deliver all of the functionality that managers need when they're approving payments. So if we come in and do a payment batch very quickly, So we'll do a payment to vendor 1,200. And then we'll do another payment to vendor to 2,800. Oh, there's our one there, and there's another one from earlier today. So we'll do that. So now that process doesn't change from the way it does today, but when you go to post this batch, this is where our workflows module is now intercepting it to say some of those payments need to be approved. So you can see down here, the status is now awaiting approvals. And so those payments have gone to the controller for the controller to review them. So if we now log in as the controller and we now come to the workflow notifications module and into the approval console. So here, right at the start of the session, I talked about WN workflow notifications covering 24 entities. So that's why it's got this tree view here. You can see there's a vendor, someone's adding a new vendor. And here are some AR invoices, or could be AR credit notes. But let's just look at our payments. So here are our two payments that we did in batch 108. So this first payment is $33,000. So let's, we want to know what is the invoices that is being paid. So this, if you click on detail, it shows you those two invoices. And then from those invoices, you can then drill back through to this screen and then back to the AP invoice entry screen and look at the PDF, and again look at the approval, who approved it, and the date and the time and any comments they put in. So again, we're just sort of utilising that same sort of drilling to try to provide all the information the manager needs to approve that payment. So if we're happy with that, and same with this one, we want to look at the, whoops, I hit the wrong button, so I just click on detail, shows us the invoices. If I pick the right one, so there's our one. So this is the one that came in through the DPS system without anyone having to make any changes to it, although we did change the GL code, was the only thing we changed. And so we look at the PDF, and then we look at the approval process, who approved it. All right, so yeah, so then if we're happy with that payment, we click on that and we hit post, so that pushes both of those two along. Again, you can have multiple approvals on your payments, and it can all be based on dollar values if you want. But if we come back here, we can see for both of those payments, they only needed one approval, and that was the approval that we just did. So this is now set, ready to post. So now it carries on through the rest of the process, and here it's set up to print checks, but I think in Australia that wouldn't be very common. So normally in Australia and New Zealand, it would now be putting out an EFT file and uploading that EFT file into the banking software. But I think the key point here is that the WN inserts itself at the appropriate point in the approval, in the process as to where an approval should be done. All right, so that's just a very quick look through. I think that sort of covers as much as we've really got time for. So if we come back to just our PowerPoint. So just to recap on the benefits, so AP automation, so yeah, more control and some big efficiency gains. So gains for AP and for the cost center managers and for finance. We've also had some clients say they can closing off their accounts a few days earlier once they implemented our AP automation. And yeah, really it reduces the number of errors as well, with the system doing the automated data capture. And just on the Pacifictech expense, we've had some good success stories from customers in Australia and New Zealand. And really on the whole credit card side of things, a lot of companies, that's a real painful area. It takes up a lot of time. And what customers are saying to us that have implemented this, it really transforms it from quite a time-consuming process into something that works quite elegantly. So we've got a white paper that just talks about how that the credit card and the expense reporting works, so we can make that available to anyone that's interested in looking at that. And just a final thing here is to just what differentiates us from other systems. So there's lots of AP automation systems that are out in the cloud, and you know, I guess a lot of them do some really good stuff, and I guess just we're quite different to most of them, because the difference is with us that the data is sitting inside Sage 300, you know, so you don't have, we have these other systems quite often, there's problems with transactions not syncing properly, and people have to reconcile to make sure all the invoices have come across from the cloud system into Sage 300. So we don't have any of those issues at all. All the data is in only one place, which is inside Sage 300. Then also the configuration, because it's inside Sage 300, so you know how to learn, you know, you'll be able to learn it easily, and you can look at, you know, do a lot of the configuration yourself. So it's very low cost of ownership. And also it utilises all the settings from AP vendors. So it utilises the GL codes and the ABN numbers. Also, yeah, data extraction, so it's really next generation, so it's much cheaper than what it has been, and it works better. Which, yes, like I just said, is much cheaper. And also, if you want an end-to-end procure-to-pay process, we've got that well covered as well. Right, and just we've got here a list of some of our other modules. I mean, we've covered some of these already, so I won't spend too much time on this. So, but yeah, we've got, yeah, like I say, a broad range of solutions for workflows and controls and mobility. All right, and so here's some of the customers that we've got that are Pacifictech customers and MicroChannel customers. So MicroChannel's one of our top resellers worldwide, so they've got a lot of staff that know our solutions very well.